Thank you very much, and I'm really sorry, but I am here. I mean, in the airport, at the airport, in my car, and hopefully internet connection is going to be good enough, so we can broadcast this message. So first of all, I want to thank the organization for the opportunity of presenting this. Can you see my screen? Yes, we can. So I want to thank the organization for the opportunity of presenting a little bit, because you have talked about animal welfare, and as you well know, here in Europe, we have many of bills already passed. Animal welfare is more regulated, and when we were asked to cooperate, we thought that the best thing to explain this topic, who are working, especially for people who are working with traditional system, is what is the experience we have had in Spain in transforming the whole of the pig population into group gestation. So that is what we have prepared. So first of all, I want to explain, if you work in the pig field area, well, you know the Spanish market. Maybe you have visited Spain as well. You know that Spain, it is the third world producer of pig, third largest world pig producer. It has a largest world pork amount of, I mean, we're talking about 2.5 million of reproducers. And here you can see a graph. The data we're going to share now, I want to explain you, are basically the database from the poor, which is a department research study in Catalonia. They share information about 1 million souls, and one benchmarking company, which is called SIP Consultants, maybe you know it. It also has a database of more than 1.5 million of souls. It offers marketing services for all of the farmers, can compare the results in terms of production in order to compare it and to try to find some improvement possibilities. So the Spanish market, it is clearly concentrated in exports. Spain is the second biggest exporter of pork in the world after the USA. Therefore, as you can imagine, the cost of production because of feed, it has been 15 and 20% higher than the USA. So Spain competes in the high quality market. And within the quality standards, we have included welfare. Many countries prefer paying more, not only for a good quality product, warranting that growth promoters have not been used, or there's been a limitation in the use of OMGs, feeding with cereals who have been genetically modified, and also having the safety standards, which are the highest in the world. Spain, it is highly concentrated market. The medium of the commercial and the size is around 1,400 souls. It is a market which is highly concentrated. Many of the farms have more than 2,400 zones in the winning phase, 1,600 with the second stage, with the maximum that the Spain concentration may have in just one place. Due to environmental elements for this type of industry. And this is applied all through the territory in order to use purin as a fertilizer in a sustainable fashion. So therefore, the size of exploitation is limited to just 1 kilometer. So what you will see, it's going to be the history of how this has been transformed We did it in small farms and also in really big farms. And the media data, which you're going to see, the average data, are this of benchmark group 1 million point something, which are the biggest ones. Because these type of zones are the ones, and this type of companies are investing in this type of tools. But everything you're going to see, it is much easier to do in a farm which is smaller. So I will explain where this comes from in terms of legislation that made us change this production system. In the year 2001, the European Union, there made different bills with different restrictions in all of the member countries. They say sows had to be kept, sows and guilds had to be in groups during a period starting in from 4 weeks after the service. So for the industry that had or used to have as a whole, with exceptions of campings, pig production in open door areas, that is in the Iberic part, all of the population of pigs were in individual cages. So that is the first thing that we thought was that those zoos now they're going to be housed in groups. They're going to have some fights. Will be a conception index, which is going to be for the works and it's going to collapse. There will be some abortions. So we thought it would be a disaster. The legislation, here are some part of the legislations, by the way. The square meters required for each animal were also set in this legislation. It says it is 200.25 for each of the sow and 1.64 per guild. And it can be increasing at 10% in groups of 6 sows, and it can be lowered in 10% if we're talking about groups of 40 sows. So if you do your maths about the space an individual cage uses, well, this required having 10 and 15% more of space for the gestation period, with of course, an additional cost, not only materials, but also the labor. So that's why we panicked a little bit on the impact of this cost and how this would affect the competitiveness of a market, which is a mainly exporter, because you know that Spain is the second biggest exporter in the world, but in the European Union, we also have some other exporters, such as Germany and Denmark, for instance. So this, let's say, another concern that we had was that we have sows and guilds kept in groups. So how are we going to feed them without them competing or without, or I don't know, making them eat equally? By law, we have to guarantee that animals are going to eat what they need in a non-competitive way. So we didn't really know how to do that. So this was passed in 2001. We had to apply it in all of the new farms from 2003 and in all of the existing farms from 2013. Yes, so any new project had to meet the law, and we had up until 2013 to do all of the investment and changes in the older farms. So for January 2013, all of the population and the shades had to be transformed. How did it happen? We're going to have a description of how it happened. In the picture on the left, we have the typical facility that we had in gestation up until, in the past, which is the same we're still having for insemination and the first 4 weeks of gestation, individual cages. between 60, 70 centimeters width times 2.5, 2.20, 30 centimeters long, with a back door, front door, an aisle at the front and at the back. A dosificator, we can regulate how much each saw eats. And this is what they had mostly. So we had to transform all of that into parks. That's how we call them. A big part of the sector, what they did was doing a transformation. 85, I mean, for the year 2013, 85% of the population, what they had done was transforming what they had. The other 15% did an extension, and they built a new group gestation facility. They used the old facilities for insemination up until the 4th week. This norm, this new legislation also forced us to do the weaning at 21 days. That's what we had. And now it is forbidden. We have to do it at 28 days unless we have an evidence or a problem, sanitary problem, justifying doing the weaning before. So we need to have enough spaces for the labor to work at 4 weeks. So the average weaning is 26 days. But most of the people, this is the transformation, the most common transformation, right? From 2 lines, we're going to just one. I eliminate the back part of this box, individual box, and on the other, some of them eliminated the back part, but some others, in order to save time and money, basically they eliminated the door. And in the end, there is a 10, 15% space less for the requirement of 2.5 or 2.5 or 2.25, depending on how big the group is. So they eliminated all of the boxes in order to have a kind of park in a C shape. I cannot see you, but I hope I have explained this properly. So 85% of the farms by the year 2013 had been transformed in this way. So the alternatives, when gestation room it is new, and when there is a deep transformation, because this new gestation part, it also means having some deep transformation, taking out all of the equipment in the shade, and also changing, let's say, everything. We have to reuse the space, the facility, and it's going to be much more expensive than even building a new one. So when we're having a new facility or a transformation on it, I will show you which were the systems that were installed and how they were installed. Anyways, there were some people that, in order to recover that 15% of space they had lost, not willing to build more and not reducing the space, because many of these farmers that transformed these gestation areas had to reduce their size in 15 up to 20, 25% in order to use the whole maternity space for having, in this case, this space, especially for lactating activities. So they had to create a shade in the outer part, and well, they got some extra square meters that could be used. And on the left, it was, a transformation from weaning areas into gestation areas. So this was done for making them having more maternity spaces. Many farms did this in order to use a second place, taking a certain place into an outer part, and these weaning areas were transformed into maternity and gestation. So they had to do some adaptations in all of the facility. And in this case, there were insemination cages, because this farm, they were they were willing basically to have more insemination. In the new farms and what we're currently doing, and this is what we are building since the year 2013 up until 2022, 55% of the market is using semi-boxes. Semi-boxes are cages where basically they are built with some openings on the floor, and this is going to help in order to control the temperatures in the shades. So they have a feeding line with a little individual box. It is recommended to have as a minimum, I mean, the best is having a separation up until the shoulder height in order to avoid competition. But if it is high enough for them not to collide their heads, is going to be enough. Now, there is a dirty area that needs to be apart from the feeding line. But the first thing that we learn is that if we give enough space, let's say, it is really important in these group systems to have enough space. If we lower to 2.5 in big groups, it is bad. If we do it 2.5 for small groups, that is bad. So in our experience, not only we're talking about 8 million pigs in the European Union, and right there, the measurements by law are appropriate. Following these patterns, we can get sows to eat in a proper way, not non-competitive way, and in that way, they're not going to have fights for food. Of course, there are some things that need to be known, such as we are usually taking guilds in a different place, and first delivery sows are around 50% of the population, and those were the guilds. And the ones who have a first delivery are around a 40%, and it's better not to mix them. They shouldn't be uh, mingling with the sauce. So the bigger the farm, it allows us better to have these lots, to have them bigger in order to do a selection of the animals. A farm with a weekly goal of 150 sows, well, that allows us to do 5 separations, which are rather big. We can have one pen for guilds and one pen for guilds. We're not feeding them individually. We're feeding them the medium. So therefore, it is important that sows have a body shape or body size which is rather similar, because if there are smaller ones or bigger ones, well, in that case, I mean, they need to be separated. And in that type of systems, there is a zone for kind of a nursery for doing some individual treatments as well. 30% of the population, it is used, they use it electronic feeding systems. These systems, all of the source have a transponder in the ear that allows the feeding station to know which sows are in. They are in a cubicle, which allows it to eat without any competition. And this is the only system that allows us to feed sows individually. So they get into this cage. There is a limit feeding curve according to its body size, and they eat individually. There are 2 big trends. These should be dynamic groups, blending, mingling sows of different insemination lots. And this is better for small farms because these gestation lots batches are rather small enough to have multiple parts for 12 weeks of gestation. If they're working every 4 weeks for the four groups, but it limits the movement. They cannot be of more than 20% of the cells per week or at the same time, because otherwise, if we change 50% of the cells, there will be too much competition and they will be fighting all of the time. So therefore, it is limited to have a 20% change of the animals per week. This also means some noise, because of course, cells have some patterns in terms of resting zones, and the new cells in the group need to find which is the space, free space, that the ones who have left have left. So in zoos, the bigger farms, what they are doing, because it is easy or easier to manage with better results, are these static groups. It is a whole, I mean, all in, all out. This means you can have groups as we would do with the semi boxes. Depending on the type of technology, it could be done cheaply, efficiently, of 20 up to 80 animals per group. But these, and you don't really need to have a selection. So in these dynamic groups, machines are connected in batteries. So individually, in the front part, they have a selector. So each week or each band, I need to separate the percentage of cells going to maternity. In the static groups, I don't really need to do this selection because the pen, it is all in or all out. So we're still keeping the patterns, having the cells into a different space, but we can feed them individually. When I say that they work better, well, at the end, there is a comparison of the productive results, and we will explain why this happens. 12% of the population was transformed in high capture cages, as you can see in the picture on the left. So cells get in there, and when they are in, they are blocked, and they can only get unblocked if they go backwards. It is in the type of feeding that we have. In this case, the soil is more protected. It is not being used so much because usually these pens are properly done if they are separating soils in terms of age and size. But in some other smaller farms, we cannot do this, or we cannot have enough groups in order to select or separate the soils, because over here, gills and soils can eat in the same pen without any competition. But we cannot adjust the dose in those cases unless we block them and we do some individual corrections. But that is not possible at all, not manageable. And the only way to feed them individually, it is, in this case, these isolated boxes with this electronic system. As you will see in many pictures, most of the time, saws are still in the cage because they feel more protected. But of course, they can get out whenever they want. They can move around, and they can feel free. Then later we have a limited amount of people that decided to put all of the cells in the same pane with a low level of uh, feeding, with low energy amounts, and they have not worked properly. Just a few people have been able to make this work. Same situation with this slow falling. There was a concept of, well, I will provide a feed in such a way that they're going to stay there eating and they're not going to compete for food in some other spaces. But the speed of feeding of the sauce depends on the size of them. So therefore, and there's a individual variability. So therefore, sauce, even though if they're having extra feed, they get too nervous if it is too slow and they're going to bother others. So therefore, these systems are rarely seen, and they have not succeeded. This is what happened. Here we have the four curves of the four parameters of production that we were the most concerned of what happened from the year 2001 up until 2021. The first concern was this green line, that is the fertility at the fourth week. As you can see, since 2013, when we started having these farms in 2003, it has been lower, but when it has gone the lowest is when we worked in block from 2010 to 2013. Different from what we thought, fertility has not, has improved and and it has improved even more than we had expected because of the genetic improvement, abortion from week 4 and 12. We're talking about more than 1 million sows. This is the average of 1 million. It has been quite steady. There is no big change or dramatic change that we can see. There are some peaks, but well, there is some mortality of sows, and we don't really know what the cause may be. Productivity of the ones who were born alive as a whole, the difference between the ones who are born alive and the ones who are born not really, or dead, and that has to do with the gestation stage. That's been increasing. More than 1% that it increases because of the genetic improvement. So therefore, in 2018, we are, well, here you can see the average of the national production here in Spain, which is around 28 piglets. And there, this line between the ones who were winning and the ones who are born, it is getting open because of the mortality during the delivery. There are more being born alive, but the mortality is getting bigger, so we're working on that. Therefore, not only there is a loss of production, but there's also an increase in productivity.
Well, what you can see here is a difference in productivity, in self-capture, semi-boxes. Let's go to what's important, which is the number of weaned piglets. In the slide of the change I have mentioned, let me go there. The barns which were transformed to those who were not transformed, there was almost 1.5% of piglets of difference. From working on a minimum transformation, adjusting it to what you have, to working on a deep and profound transformation, that is like 1.5 piglets of difference, but within the different systems, between the worst and the best, there's also 1.5 piglets of difference on average. Those are 2013 data. For today, probably they are closer to other numbers because semi-boxes have been better built in these last 9 years. We have learned a lot about design. Those are data from 2013 when the change was produced. Then the self-capture system allows us for that. You can see that there is more consumption of feed, but this is just by piglet. Despite we produce more piglets, we consume almost the same feed, but a little bit better due to the activity level. But on the individual feed, that feed is provided to the source, which really need that. Then the great difference, why this 1.5 piglet of difference? As you know, food control of yield is fundamental when they are in the farrowing. It's probably the most important factor marking their production life. Then food, on average, in source is relatively successful, but in yields is one of the main reasons why you should have electronic food machines, food control of yields. I suppose that the organization will share these charts. I won't go into detail here. Let me see my time. How much time do I have left? 2 minutes. Okay. Do I have to stop sharing the screen? No, you're still sharing it. No, 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 it's all right. We can see if we can do it ourselves. Start minimizing your screen. No, I cannot see you, but well, it's the same. I'm going to start concluding. Can you hear me, right? Yes, we can hear you and see you perfectly. Okay, then after 10 or 20 years since the law was enacted and 10 years after generalized application, this sector is very pleased. Of course, there might be a minimum percentage in the sector who have transformed the barn, but they have the stalls individually housed. They are minimum cases because results validate the system. Cells, souls have a better condition when they get to farrowing. The body condition and health are better. What's coming? As you can see, probably in July, you heard of it, there was a meeting of the commission where they have already asked to study an extension of the law in 2017. There will be a new law on animal welfare, and the two aspects and the study, and we already have experience, extensive experience on that, and we believe that they will be passed because they are working perfectly, is insemination, dissolved insemination. Source will not be enclosed during the first 4 week. They will be closed only 3 days after insemination, and that will need facilities similar to what we have seen, but you can see now on the right, probably the implementation of automatic resell. You will have to resell by hand in a conflictive pen. We know, we have the know-how, they have been tested and they have been proven. And just to conclude, we talked about the cageless maternity, such as the LED, which is a temporary stall, and you use between the farrowing date and until piglets use the nesting area, then the probability for them to die is reduced. The cageless system, as you can see on the right, that is a lot more controversial and much more difficult to handle. And we're having light and dark. But this limited stall system has been massively installed in many countries. They are mandatory and they've been like that for several years, like Switzerland, for example, and they work as good or even better than the ones we currently have. Obviously, more manipulable material is needed so that the soul does not lose the instinct to create a nest, and that reduce the possibility of death for piglets, and animals have more time. There's several advantages. I don't have much time now to refer to it. I get now a couple of questions. Maybe you have a minute, we can share them. Question number one: how much is the estimate cost when changing traditional gestation to group gestation with electronic individual food? Unfortunately, I won't be able to give you some numbers because it's a very big variability from country to country. It depends on a great deal on the country. But what I can say is that in a new, well, if it were a comparison regarding equipment, there's no a significant change. when we talk about galvanized individual stalls, it's not that different from this electronic food system. Probably edification cost will cost 67%. The shed will have to go from 1 to 15% bigger. And there is a cost involved in there, but I cannot give you exact numbers. What I can say is that in Spain or Europe, no farmer has had economic problems based on this adaptation. And let me connect it to the second of a person. Also, a question that says that if there have been some economic aid and if they have been national, and that would be the closing for these questions to continue this event. In some European country there was, but it was not the case of Spain. And this is why we were given 10 years to make the change so that we can compensate what we have done. And I have said it, in those years, the sector has worked well, has done well, and it has been taken to have a technical renewal both in maternity and gestation. And as you have seen in the numbers, we are enjoying the investment and the results of it. Thank you very much, Oscar. It's been a pleasure.